Good morning, everyone. Welcome once again to Accuracy in America. I am your host, Don Irvine, joined by my co host, Brian McNichol.
Hello, deplorables, dregs, despicables, chumps, Neanderthals, semi-fascists, and of course those dog-faced pony soldiers.
All right. So we're at the point now where we don't have to say Happy New Year to anybody that we meet or talk to.
Yeah, I think we're on into the new year. I remember, the old days, people wrote checks, and it took a while to get used to putting the new year on the checks. And that don't really come up anymore. No one writes, except for Minnesota. No one writes checks. Something like 2/3 of the checks in the country are written in Minnesota.
Okay, well, that's a really random.
Weird. They go to the 7-Eleven and pay for $6 worth of stuff with a check in Minnesota. It's a strange thing.
I wasn't naming a file yesterday. I was having to save some files, and the first one I did, I put, I dated it January 22, and then I started, and I was doing the other one's 23. It took about the third one I was doing in the string, and I'm like, wait a minute.
That's right.
Yeah. So but you're right. I mean, it's not like it was really in the old days. I mean, we used to do so much check writing back in the day that was a thing, that misdating the check for the year was always happening. I mean,
yeah,
it was just something you just kind of in this mode, and you never thought about the flipping it over and everything like that. But yeah,
thanks, technology.
Yeah, just think about the whole how technology too is also. I mean, it's changed the banking world. I mean, right? You can deposit a check with your phone, right? And so I just as kind of this one thing, I notice, that at the bank that I use, which is just up the street from me, it's like, I drive by that thing a couple times a day going back and forth to the gym. And, the drive-through, not used like it used to be. There's not that many cars in the parking lot for the lobby service. It's just a small little branch, but it actually has a lot of business, because there's several businesses in the area, including this Potomac Disposal, which is a big trash company in the area. And so, their employees used to always go there and cash their checks on Fridays and stuff like that. I know that Friday afternoon, if you drive by, you don't see those lines anymore. I mean, I think,
direct deposit.
Between direct deposit and other things like that is just, it's just not necessary, for a lot of these transactions anymore. You move money. You don't have to fill out go to the bank and say, I want to transfer money from my savings to my checking, or vice versa. You just do it on your app, or do it on your, laptop or whatever. So,
yeah. And it's a lot of convenience, but it's also, you're ceding a lot of control, right?
Yeah, you are. I mean, this is one of the risks, of doing this is just that, and we've seen this with lots of different things of technology, is that because so much of our information is basically out there, whether it's through the banking system or whatever, that, if you get hacked somehow, you're now extremely exposed for identity theft and all, and just losing money.
And in Canada, they had those trucker protests, right? And so what the Canadian government did was it just turned off the bank accounts of the people protesting, right? So you can't buy gas for your truck or whatever, but you also can't buy food for your kids,
right?
They had the power to shut you down, make you broke. Government, we need to stop and think about the powers we're given to government. It's not as bad here as it is in Canada. Canada's kind of a lost cause. In fact, that's one thing that's kind of interesting. The country that gave us the Magna Carta, right? Its colonies, right, are having a real crisis of democracy, right? This woman just quit in New Zealand, Ahern or Ardern or whatever. Right? She was a straight up Nazi, right? She took all the guns after the Christchurch. She locked the country down without, a moment consideration for COVID. There's essentially no individual rights that the government has to respect in New Zealand. Australia, just as bad. Australia, they're still fighting about this, right? About the way the government, overweening power of the government to deal with the COVID crisis, right? So, Canada, same thing, right? They're soft on freedom. The countries of the Magna Carta, the British Crown colonies, don't seem to get freedom anymore, right? And I think we left that. U.S. left that for all the right reasons, right? Because the Crown, for all its benevolence, right, or whatever, they never gave a crud about freedom, right? That's something we fought for. That's the American idea. So, and now it turns out that the currency, the thing to keep you viable, is freedom, right? And you have control of your money. You have control of your agency, right? You can go where you need to go.
Yeah, I mean that is the
dangerous stuff going on here.
Yeah, maybe that's why Roscoe Bartlett's off the grid.
Yeah, I know Roscoe ain't wrong, man.
I have to keep bringing Roscoe up every once in a while because
I think we should, because we're the only ones doing it.
Yeah.
You want Roscoe Bartlett news?
Yeah,
you've got to come here.
Who else remembers Roscoe? Poor Roscoe. Right. See, we could get Roscoe to watch the show if he wasn't off the grid.
Off the grid. There's no way. I mean, you need a whole computer to do this, right? You got to have Facebook.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's too much. Good old Roscoe. I mean, he's just still chugging along, I guess. All right. Well, let me, just because you brought this up, New Zealand. So, I think there's somebody that's kind of in line to succeed her, right?
Right.
I didn't even look in. Is this person any better?
No, he's worse. But there's the reason that she gave it up is there's about to be an election and her party is not going to win. So, he's not going to be prime minister for long either, because the party's about to get wiped out.
Yeah. So, I mean, he's basically just taking over until the election.
Term, caretaker.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So, yeah. So, maybe things will turn a little bit there. So here.
Well, it'll be interesting to see, because, right, the thing you always read about this stuff is you can vote yourself into it, but you can't vote yourself out. So it'll be interesting to see, and it's been the same thing here, like with all the COVID controls. The thing has been taking the controls off, like government reducing its power to tell us what to do, right? And the government's not comfortable with that, right? Once they get a power, they're not comfortable with giving it back. So it'll be interesting to see like how much rolling back there really is.
Yeah. Speaking of COVID control, though, it's like, where is the U.S.? It's like, Joe Biden has said, right? I thought Joe Biden had said the pandemic is over. And
right.
Yet we still have policies in place that are acting in effect like, no, the pandemic isn't over, right?
Right. And I guess the press secretary said yesterday that it's not over, right? Yeah. So it's like they use it when they need it, right? And, and sort of we do too, right? The whole Title 42, at the border. So we're not letting these people wait for their asylum claims to be heard in the U.S. because they're a COVID risk. Well, they're not any more a COVID risk than lots of other stuff we do let go on, right? So, that's sort of a flimsy excuse to do this and a flimsy way to handle this. So, there's going to be has to be some reckoning there too.
Yeah. I think Karine Jean Pierre said, it's not over because there's still hundreds of people that are dying every day, but hundreds of people die every day from lots of things, right? It's manageable now. We kind of have realized where we are with all of this, and this is not this is not thousands of people dying every day and this other things that were happening during the height of all this. We are past this, but certain government prescriptions can't seem to get away from that. I mean, we still have, that's what they're using as an excuse to extend the student loan deferment, right? The interest payments, right, and loan prepayments. And then I guess the government they are going to force Medicaid recipients to reapply. They had given them a kind of a blanket amnesty in terms of qualifying and things like that. And I realize government paperwork is a pain in the rear end, but you can't just have this go on forever and ever.
Right.
Though the Democrats will continue to try. Right.
That's right.
And all, I don't know. It's annoying to see all this, but this is our government at work.
Right. And you're pretending things are true that we all now know are not true, right? That like, oh, if you take enough boosters, you'll be safe. No, they're not going to be safe, right? And there's increasing evidence that the more boosters, the worse off you are. You're actually less able to fight the disease. So, I mean, at some point we need to say, okay, here is the sum total of what we know about this, and you guys decide for yourselves. I mean, that's where these kind of decisions should be made, especially since we know we're not dealing with a disease that's going to wipe out the population at this point.
Right. Yeah. And the push on boosters at this stage is just ridiculous.
Yeah.
I mean, I see it everywhere. It seems. I'm like, I mean, how much more? I mean, it's like, exactly what are we proving here at this point in time?
Right. And if and you do have, it's undeniable, like myocarditis is up 4,200%, miscarriages are up 5,700%, right? I mean, that's something the heck is going on here. So, it's time to like slow down and take a look.
Yeah. And I'm guessing, I mean, that I think part of this, at least, the government and these agencies, they keep pushing this because they're not getting the participation that they want. So they keep pushing this. But I think people are, normal everyday people are like, and why? He's like,
right. They're throwing away they're throwing away most of what they buy now because,
right.
No one wants it. And elsewhere in the world, I mean, they're like Denmark don't allow it. They don't even allow it, and most of the world is, shrunk their shoulders. Like, we don't need your vaccines.
Yeah. I mean, the drug companies have basically slowed down tremendously because they've had to, ditch a lot of these, all their vaccines because no one's using them anymore now, for the most part. So
yeah, I think that'll be one of the really interesting things the House GOP does this session is they want to have an investigation into COVID policy, how all this came out.
Yeah,
what was done to us and why.
Well, that might be more use than, is it the Senate that's investigating Ticketmaster and the whole Taylor Swift disaster?
Right.
Ticket scenario? It's like,
yeah, who cares?
Really, it's like they spend there. It's one of the, it's just like this. It's when these politicians they get starstruck. Okay, it's Taylor Swift, so we can't help but we get a chance to talk about Taylor Swift and how Swifty we are, because we want to be cool. But what is the purpose?
Right. That's right.
What a waste of time. It's just amazing. Yeah. All right. I do want to just spend a little bit of time here. So we're 335 days into this Ukraine thing. So yeah, we're coming up very quickly on the 1-year anniversary of the war here. But now the US is, they're stepping up now. They're going to supply M1 tanks. Yep. And that is now that Germany now is saying, okay, we're going to supply tanks. They've been holding up even the shipment of tanks, German-made tanks, right? That were other European countries had to ship to Ukraine. Right. I assume that now anybody, the other countries, Poland or whatever, they can also ship tanks if necessary. But this is good. This is big for Ukraine. I mean, they needed this for the ground war part.
Yeah, they can stretch out a lot with this. This is going to change some stuff, right? You're going to be able to at least hold their territory, right, and maybe drive some people back. So it's an interesting thing going on. And like, what's going on with Germany? Why were you against this? And now why are you for it? They're trying to, walk a fine line between, opposing aggression against a neighbor because, as Germany of all people should well know, you could be next, right? And, this Russian right to a buffer country or whatever, no, you don't have a right to a buffer country, right? You have a right to live in your country. And so, I think that the world of the forces of justice are winning out here and the right things happening. And there's, he's renewed his threats to, go deeper and use the nukes and so forth. But I think at this point, he's constrained by people in his own country from nuking, right? Because the value of the economy of Russia is shot if he nukes, right?
Yeah.
You basically have no economy.
Yeah, I mean, this is just adding, this whole tank thing is just going to add to the headaches of Putin and the Russian forces because this is good. They needed this kind of, armament in essence, and that will help them a great deal. And it's just, once again, it narrows the gap of any advantages that Russia had with equipment like that, right? It's like,
Right.
and the U.S. and now, I mean, now you're getting the other countries to, if they're going to pour in some more of those, this, I don't know. I mean, Putin could.
You have a chance here of actually making Ukraine the stronger
Oh,
army.
yeah, right, exactly.
You can turn it from loss to win here.
Right, and I think, and I kind of wonder too. I think that Europe has probably breathed a big sigh of relief this winter because the major disaster of high natural gas prices and things like that did not really occur. I mean, we saw that spike earlier, last year, really last summer and everything like that. And that, they were worrying about what that would portend for the winter, but they wound up just like we have here with a milder winter.
Yeah. And you know who's had the bad winter? Russia and China, right? Yeah. China, the lowest temperature they've ever recorded yesterday, 53 below zero.
Whoa.
Yeah. The Russians had the lowest they recorded in 60 years. It was like 64, 65 below zero. So that's some cold. There's some Siberian air up there that's trapped, thank goodness, because if it gets to us, man, that's seriously cold air.
Yeah. I mean, and here we are with what, a month and a half to 2 months left, more give or take, of winter, and we haven't seen snow.
At all, right? I don't know what happened here over Christmas. Was there a trace of snow at some point? Because if you look at the paper and it says how much snow we've had, all three of the airports have trace.
Yeah.
So I wasn't here that day. I didn't see no trace.
Yeah. Once again, this area as well. It's just that you can be in, you could be at the airport and see one thing, right? Which is what they generally, and then you can be where you or I live and we will see something completely different.
I went to Clifton for basketball last night. Clifton is 12 miles away, maybe, if that. And it was 5 degrees colder in Clifton than it was in Reston.
Yeah.
5 degrees. That's a lot, man. For 12 miles.
Yeah. I mean, I always think about it. I even think about it in just in terms of rain, because, I can drive, depending upon, situation, like I can drive a mile down the road. I can leave here cloudy but dry and drive a mile and a half away and it'll be pouring, and you're like, what's the deal? It's like, as a kid, I never would have thought about that. I just would have thought these areas, it's always this way, but the weather can be very sliced and diced and extremely variable with just the minutest, areas. It's just kind of interesting to see how all that works out. I don't know. I mean, I just came back from Utah. My mother-in-law had passed away last week, and we flew out for the funeral. And this is like, oh great! It's like I have to fly to Utah in January. Great. Yeah, I mean, even my brother-in-law, who has lived in Utah for over 30 years by now, or whatever it's been. I mean, he's sick and tired of the snow that they've had this year, because they've had a lot, which is good for them. I mean, it is good. It is, it's good for the West. They need that they need that. It wasn't, it was just downright cold. I mean, in the teens, in the morning, maybe get up to 30 during the day. And then you have snow flurries or light accumulation. The worst part about that whole thing, I think, in terms of the weather, was just that my brother-in-law decided that because of the weather, he had actually checked out the cemetery to see how it looked over there, and he decided that frozen ground and all these things, the weather conditions, probably not a good idea to do anything at the gravesite initially with like other people, and so they kept everything at the funeral home, which actually was really nice. But we went up on Sunday for a small family graveside, service type of thing. And the cemetery, I mean, where my mother-in-law was being buried, which is where my father-in-law was buried 2 years ago. When he died in May of 2020, because it was, I mean, it was, it was a nice day. You go out there, it's clear skies. You got this beautiful view right up the almost on top of a mountain, hill. But in January, we're driving up, and I'm like, you just had to be careful. I mean, it's driving up and driving down. It's like, I didn't want to do this. I was like, oh, no, we had told my younger son not to even bother coming from where he lives. He was about 40 minutes away. Said, because we didn't think we were going to do it. And then others said, let's go ahead and do it. But then you're walking on snow or whatever. Yeah. I mean, I think it's still the proper send off for my mother-in-law, but it would have been very difficult for anybody else just because of the conditions up there and everything like that. I will say one thing about that trip though. It was we almost were like O.J. Simpson in the airport, because the flight out of Baltimore was a good 25 or 30 minutes late getting out. Our connection was 45 minutes in Dallas, right? So, and they didn't really make up any time flying out, and they blamed the passengers for the slow boarding, which was. I'd like to slap that flight attendant who was in charge, the senior flight attendant, who was just like, about the boarding, says it's all on you. I'm like, no, I mean, the passenger, the flight attendants are supposed to kind of help, kind of make sure things go smoothly. It's like, you don't blame it on the passengers. We get to Dallas, and they had changed the gate from D18 to D1. We were in C concourse, so we had to catch the tram. So here we have very, very little time. I mean, it was a 10:30 flight. By the time we got to the gate, it was like 9:55, right? Mm-hmm. So we catch the tram, it runs, and then I get out, and we had luck. We had some carry-on with us, and I get down the escalator, and I basically told my wife, I'm going to go there so I can try to make sure they hold the gate, hold the plane. And I got there, and there was this woman, and she's just like, we're going to close the door soon. And I was like, my wife's coming. She goes, can you see her? I said, no, but can you just watch this luggage here quickly, and I'll go back and see where she is. And she had to make a pit stop, which didn't help things any. And then the walking, those moving walkways, the ones that were in the one part of the D concourse, they were out of order on top of that.
Oh, wow.
And D1, from where you get off the tram and off the escalator, it was just like, it could have been going to Siberia. It was incredibly long. And I saw her, and I said, I grabbed her bag, and I said, you have to run, because we've got about a minute left before they claim to close the door. And there was some other young guy with her. And we get on the plane, we're breathless. And then of course what happens? They can't retract the jet bridge.
Oh.
Which took another 10 minutes or something. We weren't scheduled to get in. We got in about 12:20 the next morning, right? Saturday morning. And my Spencer and my brother-in-law were kind enough to pick us up at the airport and all that. But I thought, I'm like, okay, I don't ever want to do that again.
Yeah, it's been a long time since I've flown. I'm fine if it's a long time till I fly too.
Yeah, I was telling my sister-in-law. I mean, the thing is that I'm not all that keen. I used to do a fair amount of flying, but I'm not keen on it. It's not fun. It's not pleasant anymore.
It's crowded. It's too small. It's ugh.
Yeah, lots of different things. Okay, that was too much of a sidebar. All right, let's go on to the documents issue with Biden and now with Pence. So it's kind of interesting. I mean, give me your kind of take here now that we have that Mike Pence, with his discovery.
Okay, so what made Mike Pence decide to take a look around, right? We don't know. That's to me, that's the main known unknown that we need to get at. As for Biden, this doesn't look good, because he, for one thing, he would have no problem at all with this. Oh yeah, we found a few things. I don't know how this got here. Here, we've handed it all back. Okay, thank you, Mr. President. You got to be careful about this stuff. Yeah, I'll be more careful next time. If he had not persecuted Trump, right? If he had not made a big deal out of putting his boot in Trump's face, right, then he wouldn't have a problem now. His problem is entirely self-made here. It's been found at multiple locations, both from his time in the Senate and his time as vice president, neither of which is he entitled to. The president can take stuff like this home, but he was not president when he did this. And, I'm not sure he knows where all this stuff is or knows what all is out. And it now appears, there's a story out in the last 24 hours that there's some email traffic that suggests Hunter was doing some stuff with these documents, that he had found some cash value in them, and was making some deals. So You know, there could be a whole lot more to come out about this story. Joe acts guilty, right? He's trying to look cooperative while not bullying anybody who asks him questions about it. You know, it's like, I love the media. I was like, Trump he fussed with him about all this. He argued about every little detail of it. It's like, because Trump was asserting that he was criminally okay here, right? That he was within the law for him to keep this stuff. Whereas Biden is caught dead to rights and is trying to ameliorate the punishment. Okay, those are two different, you know, you're always, once the cop catches the drug dealer's like, yeah, here's my scales, here's my this, here's my that. Go easy on me. You know, I'm not going to make you search for anything else. Go easy on me. That's what Biden is. And the more they search, the more they find, because he doesn't even know where all this stuff is. You know, that's the other thing is like, there's a couple of things. One is, obviously the law we have here is not adequate, right? Because there's really no Presidential Records Act. There's no criminal penalty. And there kind of can't be, because you kind of can't tell the head of a branch what he can do or not do, right? He's also the head of a branch. And, you know, we need to get a better system, because like part of this is the documents people, NARA or whoever, they don't really know what they're missing, right? They don't just like when the term ends, it's like they don't have a list. We must collect the following 372 documents, right? Oh, well, we only have 369 documents. We need to go find these other three. It doesn't work like that. They have no idea. Things are getting stuffed in boxes, and you know, none of these people are. You know, it is probably the case, perhaps not with Biden, but definitely with Pence and probably with Trump, that, you know, they didn't really realize that there was classified documents and what was getting thrown into stuff as they ran out the door, right? No one packs ahead of time on these things. You wait till the last day because you're working, right? And so, you know, I don't know. To me, it's like, you know, Biden wouldn't have any problem with this at all if he had not been so ugly to Trump about it. You know, but now he deserves all the full length of the scrutiny of the government, you know, because he may be up to some stuff, or Hunter Biden may be up to some stuff with these documents.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just looks a lot worse for Biden. I mean, you know, he appoints a special prosecutor, right, or you know, to look at the Trump thing, which then forces the DOJ's hand in a way to do the same thing on his documents, right? Once again,
Right.
as you had said, you know, if he had made this big hoo-ha about this with Trump, the document discovery with him would be lesser, you know, less in the news,
Right.
and not, you know, people wouldn't scrutinize it as much. You know, one of the problems Biden has too is that weren't some of the documents found from his Senate days, which he definitely should never have had, which
Right.
makes it, you know, another thing, as you mentioned, and just the amount of money that they, you know, that was raised, you know, that they took in from China for the Penn Biden Center and things like this, you know, makes things just a little murky. You know, I'm not going to flat out say they're guilty of things, but boy, it sure doesn't look good. I mean, the appearance of this is just not good. And what's Biden's reaction is kind of, there's no there there.
It's like we'll be determined of that, right?
Yeah.
The other thing is, here's my question. So he's at the Penn Biden Center, right? And so when they set up the Penn Biden Center, he was awarded a salary of like $920,000 a year to be the name on the door of the Penn Biden Center, right? So do those payments still come in? Because all that money came from the Chinese. So if they don't, the Chinese are paying our president twice as much as we are. What could go wrong, right? Right.
Well, I guess we would know. I mean, they are releasing their tax returns every year.
No, they've taken their tax returns offline.
Oh, the Bidens have?
Yes.
Hey, what happened to all that transparency? Wait a minute.
Yeah.
What did we wait a minute? What did we just fight for with Trump? What did those Democrats just fight for with Trump?
Yeah, that's right. You know, they got Trumps, and that showed what? That Trump is the only guy who's come to Washington in the last 50 years and left poorer than when he came. Right. So he must be the one who's dishonest, you know?
Yeah. I mean, all that fuss to find that out, and you know, so the media is not anywhere near as interested in that now as they were before, because he lost money. His net worth just shrunk.
Yeah.
You know,
And it's
so
like,
that,
where's our tax stories?
yeah, where's all the criminal intent?
We
And
were
all
promised tax cheating wall to wall. Where is it?
yeah, and how inflated his things. Yeah, so it's just incredible to see that. So, but I think Pence, in a lot of ways, I mean, I think he was smart in the sense of going ahead and having, hiring attorneys and going and checking this. I mean, obviously, I think Pence is looking at 2024, a potential run. You want to be clean on this, and this documents thing has just kind of spun out of control, so it taints everybody. And there's no telling, if we look at, Obama and Clinton.
Yeah, we've never seen what Obama has, right? He
Yeah,
has it locked in
we don't
this
know. I mean,
thing,
they can have stuff too, and as you said, the archives. I mean, this. They don't have any. They have no idea really what they're supposed to be getting. So it's very easy for stuff, clearing out to get stuffed in boxes. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, one administration leaving, another administration going out. There's a lot of stuff going on. And so, when a lot of people will just be throwing things in boxes or whatever to get them out and on a truck or whatever. But but Biden's is just, it's spread out, and all of this stuff, the stuff during this time in the Senate, it is just, it just leaves a lot of question marks there.
Yeah, they're not giving us good answers. I mean, it looks more suspicious the longer it goes.
I think it
was
was
also, if you'd have let the Hunter Biden laptop stuff come out, you wouldn't have that pressure on you now either, because now, we're looking for the connection between the laptop stuff, the influence peddling, so forth, and these documents. Okay, you might not have found that connection or even thought of that connection if all we had was, Biden, whoops, I had some documents. Here they are, all back. Right? Yeah, that's not what's happening. It keeps leaking out. They keep finding stuff that he didn't tell them to look for, all this kind of stuff. So, yeah, there's Spencer. Yeah. It's Foster rearing his ugly head. Look at that.
Let's shout out to my son Spencer there. He is my father would be proud of him for that comment.
Yeah. Yeah, that's still what, that one's still a mystery to me. I mean, that could be a straight up story, but I mean, the minute this happens, her and Hillary and Bernie, what's his name, are going through his office, cleaning out all his stuff. So, her deep sympathy for her friend Vince lasted about 5 seconds till she realized that there was criminality that had to be covered up.
And actually, what Spencer, I mean, he does put this thing in here, and with a laughing out loud type of thing, but it actually just kind of made me think, that with this whole Hunter Biden thing, and I don't want to go down a big rabbit hole. It's like dark web. Well, why couldn't Hunter Biden, with his dealings, dark web, things that would be hard to trace, we don't know about it or whatever. I mean, there's just a whole can of worms here for the Bidens with all of this.
Yeah, I mean, he doesn't appear to be all that slick a criminal dude.
Yeah,
so like whatever he does, we're gonna probably find out about it at some point.
Yeah, I don't know about that guy. It's just.
You think about this. So, this stuff has all come out about what all he's done. So you have a son who appears to be running an extortion influence ring, right? Where he's going to foreign governments and selling policy outcomes that his dad will deliver, right? He's spending enormous amounts of money on hookers and drugs, right? Like more than just your typical live to excess guy. I mean, he's pouring thousands and thousands of dollars into this. Like, he's desperate to be the most hooker and drug infested guy ever, right? And the daughter is, she's also obviously had a lot of emotional, sexual related problems. Says in her diary that Joe molested her and so forth. What the heck was going on in that household? What kind of man is he behind closed doors, right? Because his kids are messed up, and then you have one who appears to have done, because like a lot of times you get in those families, you have the one kid who's the hero, right? He does everything way above board. There are a lot of great people in the world, but the reason they got great was being the family hero because one or more, both of the parents were failures, right? And he like becomes the hero, the mainstay of the family. But the other two are hot messes, right? The other Hunter and the daughter are hot messes. So, to me, it's like, that was not a good house to grow up in. That was not a healthy thing at all. So, I mean, it's something else to think about. Everybody's like, Joe, well, Trump's such a bad man, and Joe is so, moral and whatever. Apparently not.
Yeah, I mean, there is somewhat of a selective, I mean, blackout, on the Biden children, versus say the Trump kids, right? I mean, the
Trump kids had a laptop like this. We would know everything. All the criminal charges that could have been derived from its contents would already have been filed, right? We would have trials and people in prison right now over that stuff, right? Yeah. Double standard is ghastly. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, so I was going to say that, if when it comes to these, I mean, I think the media, they're struggling with this documents issue. I mean, I think it was Steve Portnoy from CBS that tried to ask, Karine Jean Pierre about the difference between the Pence and the Biden, revelations. Because with Pence, they revealed it right away, right? I mean, but with Biden, what, it took 2 months or more, or something like that. So, and she's just basically stonewalling, saying, we've already answered that, or something to that effect.
We've been perfectly clear. No, you haven't. The other thing is, the other upshot of this that people are it's a little noticed is there's a result of all this document whatever. Trump is now firmly in the lead to be president in 2024, both for the Republican nomination and against Biden. He's like 4 points ahead of Biden in the polls now to win the 2024 presidency. So Trump's went from, little hope, should drop out, hopeless, terrible, we passed you by, to once again, first place.
Yeah, it's kind of funny with that too, because I mean, Trump is really, beyond the announcement, he has done very little.
Yeah, right? That's right. He's just sitting there letting his popularity come up.
Yeah, he's just basically had to sit back and watch Biden, they're imploding here right now. And that has got to make the Democrats fret a little, about their chances in 2024, because they're seeing this guy they put so much into just spiraling out because they can't control. They have no answers for stuff, and all of this. It's just such a mess. I didn't put it on here, but I did want to ask about your take on Davos and how Davos went this year.
I mean, to me, it's to the point where it's kind of a non-event. It's like everyone's discovered it and shows up, and it's like, what did Yogi Berra say? That restaurants, nobody, it's so popular, nobody goes there anymore. It's sort of like that. It's like, it's become it's such a symbolic thing now, sort of iconic. This is where all the, rich leftist gas bags go to discuss rich leftist gas baggery. And there's, panel discussions for days on end. There are a lot of people like Brian Kemp turned up for a panel discussion. I think that we on the right in the U.S. imbue this with a lot more importance and whatever than we should.
I just kind of got the feeling this year that it just wasn't being as widely followed as it has in years past. I think the interest in it has waned. Yeah, I think a lot of people are like, okay, before it was because of all the stars and all this stuff and all this, but I think people are kind of getting tired of the same old thing from these guys saying, just saying the same things year after year after year. It's like, okay, we're tired of this rhetoric and all this garbage. We have more important things in the world than to listen to you just gas bag it out here. And look, I mean, Biden, the Democrats have put a lot of money into climate change initiatives. So, are you going to call on the U.S. to, how much more are they going to be able to do? I mean, the U.S., because of Biden and Democrats, they've done a lot. The Inflation Reduction Act is not an inflation. It's all about climate change, really. In the end, the money's trying to, mitigate that. So, you can't really call the U.S. out when we're pouring all kinds of money into this.
We're the only ones coming close to meeting our emissions goals, and we're spending by far the most money. Yeah, it's hard to, but we will act called out, and we will say, "Oh yeah, you're right. We need to do more." It's like we're doing plenty, buddy.
Yeah, no, I mean it's interesting. So I thought this was interesting in the sense of, I think I've said this before. I mean, I had no love lost for Jen Psaki, but Karine Jean Pierre, and I think both of us have watched a number of White House press secretaries, over the last 30, 40 years or whatever. I don't know if I've seen anybody as bad as she is. I mean, as incompetent as this woman is, doing things, because it just, she says these things, and this other thing, another Trump administration point, that the GOP wants to raise gas prices, and I guess that this is tied to this House bill, that where if you're going to release oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, the House is saying then you need to offset that with drilling leases on federal land. Right. And she's trying to say, oh, this is going to push up gas prices, but this is a good move by the House, by the Republicans, right, to do this, to hold the Democrats' feet to the fire. And I don't understand her logic, except she's just stupid. I think.
Yeah, it's just nonsensical talking points. Like, just tell them this. Here, read off these 3 things. And she always got that book. The whole idea is to ask a question that the answer is not in that book, right? Because they've gamed out her questions. That's the other thing. Since the last time we did this, Ron Klain quit, the chief of staff, White House chief of staff.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
Replaced by Jeff Zients, who was a Montgomery County guy, I believe. And it's not, that's bad for Biden. Klain held this together. He made Biden look sane. He made their administration look competent. Without him, I think, Zients is more of an ideologue, right? Without Klain giving them a facade of competence, I think they're in real trouble. I think that's a real blow to Biden that people don't understand. And I don't think he was forced out. I think that he sees a sinking ship. I mean, Biden is well beyond the threshold right now of high crimes and misdemeanors, right? Just from what we know about these documents, right? Without nothing to do with the Hunter Biden laptops. It's just like, that's a crime, right? You don't have the right to have any of that stuff. Every single one of those things is a violation. Okay. So, would the Senate vote to remove him right now? Probably not. But I think I had this counted. We're up to 5 Democrat senators who have, to some degree, expressed concern about his documents, right? And one of whom is Dick Durbin, is a pretty stalwart Democrat. So, if the Democrats are starting to have doubts about this, then, it's not impossible if the news keeps coming out bad on this for Biden. If we learn more and there was more involved here and so forth, you got 4 or 5 guys on the Senate side already saying, this doesn't look great. So, it's not as impossible as it was. You do that, you have to think, okay, well, do we want President Kamala Harris? I don't know, right? But so, he is in a particularly weak position, and it just got substantially weaker.
Yeah. Speaking of Kamala, isn't she? Didn't she in trying to fire back at the pro-life crowd? Didn't she get in her speech? That what is it? What is she? What was she saying? Was she talking about the instead of she kind of omitted life?
Right. So life, liberty. Our guarantee is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. And there was a lot of argument when they were putting together the Constitution and the Declaration of Independence, and so forth, amongst the founders. Pursuit of what? Right. That last word, we ended up with happiness, but there was a lot of debate over what that, wealth, property, prosperity, right. It took them a long time to settle on a word they all agreed on. But no one has ever argued about right to life, right? That one was there, it's established, right? But if you use that word, then you can't abort people, right? You're depriving them of their right to life. It's straight up civil rights, as easy as you can get.
I mean, did she or her speechwriter or whatever, did they think that leaving that key out. Was
The
people
people
weren't
they
gonna pick
talk
up on
to,
that?
that's an acceptable argument. The people they talk to went, aha, right? I'll use that one, right? Without stopping to think, no, that's not that's not at all an acceptable argument.
I have never heard anybody quote and omit the word life.
Just blow it off. It's like that part of America doesn't matter. Right? We've edited that one out.
It's just that was just remarkable. I mean,
You got to remember, at the end of the day, the number one thing to remember about Democrats is they are extremely unserious. These are not serious people.
Yeah, it's just unbelievable with what these guys are doing. So, we talked about this, I think, a little bit because we knew it was probably coming on the Intelligence Committee for the House with Swalwell and Schiff. I guess Hakeem Jeffries he nominated them to the committee. This is, I guess, the Intelligence Committee is one where they actually they get to be appointed, right?
Right, because it's a select committee. It's not a full committee of the House. That's like, I always hate this because when you write about it, if you write House Intelligence Committee, that's really not the name of it, right? It's the House Permanent Select Committee on Intelligence.
Right.
So it's a select committee. So it means it has to be selected and approved by the Speaker. And the Speaker turned them down. And they reapplied, and the Speaker turned them down again. Now, in the case of, Swalwell, he says, if you got the briefing I got, you wouldn't give this guy any clearance for anything. So what's in that briefing beyond what the public knows? That'd be, sort of interesting to know. And Schiff, right? Schiff directly lied to the American people, promised he had absolutely incontrovertible evidence that Trump colluded with Russia before the 2016 election. He did not. He's lied. He lied about the Ukraine, what that was and what he had on it. They caught in just bald face. There's no other explanation for it, but that he lied, right? So I see them now. They didn't follow through on Omar? Is that correct?
I believe that's all. Yeah,
they let her go on to what is it? Foreign Affairs, right? That's fine. I'm for that, right? Because now, for one thing, the math is 2 and 2. They kicked off 2, we kicked off 2, and ours are justifiable, right? It's not just a difference of opinion. These guys are legitimate security risk, right? The other thing is, if you're mad about it, Adam Schiff or Hakeem Jeffries or Eric Swalwell, talk to the legislative genius Nancy Pelosi, because she's the one that got you into this mess, right? She did this for no reason but just to show her political muscle, right? I mean, there's no reason to kick Marjorie Taylor Greene off of her committees. She's just babbling stuff that you would disagree with. Okay, that's, the other side says stuff you disagree with every day. But, you're going to make this point, show how tough you were. And now your guys are, who are actually valuable players to the Democrats in this position are excluded, and no one cares because, a real blunder Nancy Pelosi made.
Yeah. I mean, I think McCarthy's got, good ground to stand on because of the security risk, versus just the blatant political move, by Pelosi. I mean, I can't say I'm like jumping up and down a huge fan of Marjorie Taylor Greene in general, but what was the harm of having her serve on a committee? I mean,
right.
I mean, over a lot of objections, and McCarthy has seated, Santos, right? I mean, right. The voters will, render their verdict,
right.
soon.
That's right. That's the deal on Santos. You got 2 years, you can fix this. Yeah. Right. But right now, he won an election, and you don't really have anything on him beyond that. Right. Yeah. And if we're going to put out everybody member of Congress who lied to get there, there's going to be lots of empty seats down there. Yeah.
And these committees are such that, I mean, he's definitely a backbencher. You can kind of shun him or whatever. You can kind of give him limited roles and duties or whatever. He was not likely to do a whole lot in these 2 years anyway. So he wasn't the head of a committee. He wasn't going to affect policy. So right. Yeah, right. I mean, his lies are pretty blatant. But if you want to give a lie detector test to everybody in Congress, guess what you'll find.
Right. And it's interesting how the standard is throw them out of Congress, kick them all the way out of Congress if they're Republican. Right. If they're Democrat, hey, people lie. It happens. Right. Yeah. Just blatant double standards. That's the thing. Don't stand for the double standards. Don't do it.
Yeah, and this is not new. This double standard has been in effect for a long time. We have seen lots of lying, terrible Democrats that have continued to serve and served for many, many years.
Yeah,
The voters kept reelecting them. It's like, okay, well, the
right.
voters reelected them. That's
Yeah.
that's it. I mean,
People of Connecticut, they vote for Dick Blumenthal. They absolutely know he lied about his service in Vietnam.
yeah,
Stolen valor, and they know it, and they don't care. They vote for him. That's fine. Nothing you can do
right,
about it.
right, exactly. I mean, I that to me is the stolen valor is reprehensible,
Yeah, it's
and
really bad.
but the voters
Really
reelect.
anti-American in a
Yeah,
particularly nasty way.
yeah. So that to me, that's just something you don't. But if they elect him, okay. I mean, what do that's the voters have said that they voted, and that's the way it goes. So you don't take Blumenthal. The Democrats weren't about to just shun him for that at all. I
Right.
mean,
That's right.
so uh, Nikki Haley, 2024, definitely looks like she's been floating some trial balloons here, trying
Yeah. So civil staff set up headquarters in South Carolina. Um, uh, if you are a Republican donor out there listening to this, don't waste your money on anybody but Trump or DeSantis. If you think you want to throw a flyer on him, you just can't stand Trump or whatever, because the rest of them are not going to make it. You're wasting money. You're throwing it. You might as well throw it in the street.
Yeah, I mean, at least right now, because I mean, we still have time. I mean, there's news things change, events change. We don't know what it's really going to look like 6 months to 9 months from now or whatever. And
Yeah.
that
Her thing is to show well enough to be considered for vice president.
yeah.
That's what she's trying to do. But speaking of that too, you noticed that. Did you catch Trump's reaction to Pence's document problem?
Yeah.
What did Trump say? He said he's the most honest man I know. He's never done anything dishonest in his life. Leave him alone. You can remember months ago, we talked about this on this show, and I'm like, don't be surprised if Trump does not end up bitterly hating Pence here in a few months. In a few months, all of a sudden, the anger has died down and they can work together again. And sure enough, that looks like where it's headed.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if Trump is the nominee, that Pence is his vice president again.
I never know what Trump's thinking half the time.
No,
anyway, so it's just, this is not out of the ordinary for Trump.
Yeah, he makes up with people. He doesn't stay mad. So
yeah.
If they're willing to make up, he's willing to make up.
All right. So we also had the March for Life. So the first one since kind of the end of Roe v. Wade. But Tony Dungy became kind of a lightning rod for the liberals, for things he said on Twitter. Then he retracted it, I guess, apologized for it. But I don't know. I mean, I was reading this op-ed piece by Kevin Blackistone, and just kind of excoriating,
really hateful, petty little man.
Oh man, it was just
really. Why does this guy?
Yeah.
Why do people think he's smart? He's hateful and petty and racist and small. And the attacks on Tony Dungy, you got to be kidding me, man. Your integrity against his. Good luck with that one, buddy. Tony, the mean of the commentary, right? The substance of it is, you don't have a right to tell people that they can't have abortions. It's like, you have a right to tell them, right? He has the right to be pro-life. He doesn't have to follow your thing. And it's like you watch them twist the logic and like, no, you should not be able to do that and coach players. It's like, what does that mean? It's like, the case against him is just people spitting mad that he's on the other side, right? I don't think they harmed Tony Dungy with any of this. I think he's just fine.
Yeah, I mean, I think
the other thing is on that one though. A lot of the other guys on his show, whatever one of those football shows he's on, are like, no, he's our boy. We like Tony Dungy, and we don't have to agree with him on this point, and he belongs here. So you're starting to see the athletes themselves take up for fighting for people against cancel culture. You're starting to see athletes say, "Yeah, tired of people being canceled." Right. So I think that's kind of an important development there.
Yeah, I mean, for guys like Blackstone, I mean, there's so many of these black sports writers and commentators. They always decry the lack of black coaches in the NFL and all of these things, right? We've heard this for a long time, and the Rooney Rule, and when somebody, did they use the Rooney Rule when they hired so and so? I don't think so. And all this stuff. And Tony Dungy they loved Tony Dungy as a coach, right? He was successful. He's got a great personality and all that kind of thing. But what does Tony Dungy sin? He's an evangelical Christian who supports right to life, right?
Yeah.
And so now he's a pariah.
He's a terrible person.
To the blackest stones of the world. And this, and they are trying to cancel him. They're trying to say, his career will never be the same. No, Tony Dungy, I think people will respect and continue to respect Tony Dungy for who he is, and that he actually is standing up for his principles, and he's not backing down and saying, I'm going to give in to these guys and things like that.
Yeah.
So
the good thing is we need to also know who Kevin Blackstone is, and we need to start going at that and say, okay, you're not going to get to just take these attacks on people without response. Like, you can attack, we can attack you right back, because there's a lot of hatred in that man that needs to be exposed, right, and canceled.
Right. All right, let's wrap it up. Last word. What you got?
What do we have here? So I saw the Dak Prescott. I went and looked it up. And it's like, I guess the explanation is they mean that, he had taken responsibility for it, and they were, they were saying, he's right, they were pat on the back sort of thing. But the wording of that is not, it's hard to believe that got past all the censors, without it meaning what it looks like it means. Jerry came out right after the game and said the coach was in good shape. He hadn't said anything about Prescott yet. To me, as far as I'm concerned, as a lifelong Cowboys fan, I think they need to move on. I think that his trade value is pretty high now. A lot of teams who aren't good, the Commanders, they would pay a pretty penny for a Dak Prescott, solve their quarterback problem, right? It's time to try to find the next thing, because it's not going to work like this. He's not going to ever do what he's supposed to do in a big game. You're not ever going to get over the hump. And I think that's the realization they came to in Dallas. I wouldn't be surprised at all if you start hearing that he's on the market.
Yeah, I mean, he's been a good quarterback while he's had a good career, but he hasn't taken him to that next level. Yeah. So it's
you don't see it. It's sort of it's up and down. He's not consistent, and he is penchant for playing terribly when you need him most. So yeah. I mean, he's from my home area, right? We played his high school when I was, they were in our district when I was in high school. So, he's a homeboy. I'm definitely cheering for him, but I think if the Cowboys are going to win it, they're going to have to move on.
And as someone who can't stand the Cowboys, I'm perfectly fine if he stays there.
Yeah.
All right. That's it. You just want to say one more thing?
Just looking under this list. Montgomery County, they're going to ban the gas stoves.
Yeah, so they've passed this thing by the county council 9-0, and so all elders. Yeah, that's the way it goes in Montgomery County, right? So all they have to do is really sign it, and it'll basically ban any kind of gas, in new anything that's being built starting in late 2026. Apparently, it's like great. I mean, at least we get to keep what we've got, but just a few years down the line, it's just going to be, everything's going to be all electric.
Yeah, that's terrible. Electric cooking is so much. I was home for Christmas. My sister has electric, and I was trying to cook stuff on her stove. It was like we messed up at least one thing every day trying to learn how to deal with an electric stove.
It's funny too, because for me, I mean, I think about this as like I grew up, in an old house that had an electric stove and never really thought about it and anything like this. And that's what we had, electric stove when we first got married. So for half our marriage, really, that was what it was. And then, this last 18 years, we've had gas. It's like, this is great.
Yeah.
And if you are a cook, you prefer that. So
yeah, gas is much better.
Yeah. So anyway, yes, our lives. I'm glad I'm older and won't have to live with this for 50 years or something.
That's right. That's right. By the time it gets really bad, we'll be old and falling off the edge.
That's right. All right, everyone.
So we got that going for us.
Yeah, we do. All right, everyone. Thanks for joining us again today. Please, as always, stay safe and stay well. Remember, we live in the greatest country in the world. Do not let anyone else tell you otherwise. And as always, God bless America, and we will see you again next week.